Okay, welcome everybody. Here we are with the great Cecilio Regojo. It's a huge honor and a pleasure to be here with you. I am going to hit here on the gallery view so that welcome Cecilio. It's a huge pleasure and an honor to be with you here and sharing you with our audience. Cecilio has a wealth of experience, over 40 years of experience in doing systemic work and doing business, and he's a serial entrepreneur, started companies, ran companies, sold companies, so huge amount of experience in business, and then huge amounts of experience in systemic work. He has worked in over 30 countries when it comes to systemic work, and he has trained thousands of systemic facilitators. So it's a huge honor to be here with you. I have had a pleasure of witnessing your work over a 5-day event in LA. I've been to Madrid to see your masterclass and enjoy it very much. And in Slovenia, I had the pleasure to witness your work. And so it's a huge pleasure and an honor to have you join us today, as well as this weekend. Welcome, Cecilio.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm very happy to be here with you for after all these years that we met. And I'm ready for whatever it's necessary.
Great, great to have you. And we have this event this weekend with the Mosaic, the Movement. Mosaic, the Movement was founded by Michelle Bletchner, and she's a true pioneer wanting to spread the systemic work in the United States and in the world. United States is not as strongly represented in systemic work, and that was the reason for founding Mosaic. And thank you, Michelle, for founding Mosaic, giving us the platform to share systemic work with the world. Maybe that's a good opening, Cecilio, for you. Why do you think the United States is a little bit lagging in systemic methodology compared to the rest of the world?
I think that I don't know exactly why that happens, but in a way I think that perhaps it's a kind of a conservative country, and so new things, it's difficult to come in. Anyhow, I think that it's not with the United States. In most of the countries, it's not easy. Perhaps it's easier more in South America because they are more used for things that are not so rational. But the point is that the world, since the last years, became very much rational. So we start to think just what is logic is what is right. And so we forget, I say usually to say we forget our big computer that we have, that is our, all of us, even and mainly our body. And we use only half a kilo here of knowledge. And, but that is the real thing that happens. So in a way, slowly, and this is a work that will go slowly into people. The way is how can we get in the inconscient, in the collective inconscient, so it will be something normal. Because as it's not logical, it's difficult to enter. But even when you go, and my main specialty is on organization, that is quite difficult to go in. But when you go in, they love it. So the point is, how can we go in a normal way, talking a normal language, and not with a lot of magic and all of that. And with that, we can go in. So the question for me of not going, of not spreading, it's not the people outside, it's us facilitators. And I think that we have to look to us in order what we want to transmit. And in a way, the big point is that most of us are in love with this methodology. And you know that when we are in love, we don't know how to think. And that's what happened with us. And in a way, we like to show this love and this magic. But if we can look at this methodology like a normal methodology, that everyone can use it, and you can even explain it in a very easy way, and in a, I would say, like a logical way, it will go in. The question is, sometimes I think that we difficulty the entry. I remember when I started and when I went to a company and they asked me what is organization constellations. And the first sentence I said, it was, oh, this is marvelous, but it's difficult to explain. So if I'm the expert of a methodology, say to my client that is difficult to explain, he doesn't believe on me. The question is how to explain it. And there is a lot of small, easy ways of explaining the methodology. Perhaps on the workshop, we can go through them in order how to present in a logical way. And that's what I like, because in a way, I'm quite known to demystify constellations. So for me, we have to demystify the mystery of the constellations in order to be a normal tool that can be used for a lot of people, and that is the main thing for me.
Great, Cecilio. That is a great opening, and I think that this is the area of most need for our community, the systemic community. It's the biggest need for us. How do we get the message out? What kind of words are going to be adoptable, understood? What kind of words can help us gain entry into the different organizations and different leaders and in their sphere of influence. And so I think this is going to be great for all of our audience to learn about more this weekend. And I want to talk to you about the subject of the 2-day workshop, the power of the constellation versus the power of the client. That sounds like very interesting, and I know a little bit about it, but I would love for you to share. What do you mean by that, and what is it that you are referring to?
In a way, it's the continuation of what we first talked about the magic. And the thing is that a lot of people gives a lot of power to the constellations. And the problem there is not the power of the constellations, but also give power to the facilitator. And in a way, some facilitators feel that they know more than the client in order to help the client. So in a way, I used to say that I don't believe in constellations. And that it sounds a little strong because it's my expertise is constellations. But what I say, I don't believe in constellations, but I believe on the client. So the question is that the client is the most important thing here. So we have to look to the client, and the client has the power of the magic. It's not the constellation that has the magic. It is the client that has the magic. So what I'm going to talk about and to discuss a little is that difference of where do you look? You look to the client or you look to the constellations. And when you go look into the constellations and you feel that the constellation is very good, you forget the client. So when I work with the client, my focus is the client. And when I do a process with the client, I don't want to know if it is a constellation or if it is anything else. The point is, what is the best thing that I can find now that can serve my client for the problem of the issue that my client brings with me. And that is, for me, is the most important thing. Of course, that we are used to say that the important thing is the client, but nobody see the client. And sometimes I do some exercises so people can understand that, because in our mind we say, okay, we look to the client, but we don't look to the client. We look to another lot of things there. So the question is, how can we change inside of us what is most important here? And the magic, if there is magic here, it's the client. It's not Facebook, and it's not us as facilitators.
Great. I love that. I love the fact that we are we need to take more responsibility, for our modality, and take more responsibility for our work, and take more responsibility for the client. And this is really great. And so when you say that facilitators are not paying attention to the client, they're saying that they're paying attention, but they're not paying attention. Where do you see their attention going? And they're out in the room, with the participants, with the movements, where are they, Cecilio, and why do they lose focus?
Even it's not needed to talk only about the facilitators, but also about the participants on a workshop when we know. And I used to do with my students, after I do a constellation, I ask the students who look to the client and who look to the constellation. So everybody looks to the constellation, and it's normal, because the constellation has movement. It's everything moves there. We think that there is the constellation, and we forget the client that is here. But the question is that the constellation is not going in front of us. The real constellations is going inside the client. So if you look to the client, you can check what's going on. And you can check for the micro expressions of the client. If some movement in the constellations is resonate on the client or not. If you don't look to the client, what happens is that anything that happens in the constellations, you check that if that resonates to you or not. And so in a way, I'm doing the constellation for me. I'm not doing the constellation for the client. So in a way, that's not easy, because in a way, we facilitators think that we lose the power, but in a way, we don't need power. What we need is that the client, after the work we do with the client, he go out with some outcome, with some solutions or some ideas of what to do. We are not going to solve the problems of the client.
Great, I love that. And if you can speak a little bit to the participants, to the constellation enthusiasts, a lot of times I have this thing, I think we have a similar point of view here. I talk about the field work, I talk about the constellation work, and then I talk about the human work. Because what do we do with the human work? What do we do with the insights that we gain? What is our responsibility when we go home? When we go home after the workshop, and what do you think is going to be the value of people who are, they're not facilitators, but they are facilitating their own lives. They are facilitating their families, and they are facilitating their businesses, even though they may not be facilitating constellations. What do you think is going to be most valuable for them when they come and join us this weekend?
The question is to learn what is facilitation. Because facilitation is without power. Facilitation is just to facilitate the process in order the client or the family or whatever take their own responsibility to do whatever they like or they think it's good for them. The question is that I'm, as a facilitator, I don't know what is the best for the client. What we know about the client is very few. We do an interview, they tell us something, and after, when they tell us something, if we go to our rational side, we begin to connect the history of the client with our history. And so we begin to interpret what the client said. So the point, the facilitator is not to understand the client. Facilitation is to facilitate the process. And even if the facilitator at the end of the process doesn't understand what happened, it's great. He did a good job. And the point is that you see that on the client. The question is that our ego wants to know what's going on, and also wants to feel happy because the client at the end say, oh, you did a good work. And even I saw, and I said to myself, oh, I did a good work. But I have a lot of experience where I had that feeling after I did a good constellation. My error was great. The participants and the client said, oh, Cecilio, you did it very well. And after some months, I'm with the client and nothing changed. And sometimes I'm doing a constellation where I feel it was not good. The participants also say, oh, Cecilio was not inspired in this constellation. The client somehow is not very happy. So I'm frustrated about the work I did. And some months after, I see the client, and the client did the big change. So what happens here? What's the power that I have? I don't have power. So the point is that I have to let it go. So in a way, when more I let it go, when more I don't understand, the question is the client can have insights and do whatever they like. So the question for me is not only being that, but in the process, there is a big work that is to responsabilize the client. So in a way, the client has to do all the work. So as facilitators, our job is not to do anything. in a way, in the client system, we don't have to do anything. We have to show, we have to provoke, we have to perhaps give some ideas, but the client has to do it. And if the client doesn't do, nothing happened. We know that after a process in a constellation, something happened inside of us, of course. But for having good efficiency, the will of the client is really important. If not, you know people that do the same constellations with several facilitators and don't change anything because they think that the facilitator is going to change them. And that's not the problem. The problem is when the facilitator think that can change the client. That's the big problem for me.
Great. This is a great frame. And for those of you that are having trouble with supporting your kids to do their homework or to do some kind of behavior or to support them and direct them and help them, and if you have employees and you're struggling with your employees, and how can you give back the responsibility to them in a way? How can you convey the picture in a way that they will be inspired, they will be motivated to take the action they need to take for whatever they want? This reminds me very much of the honoring the destiny of the client, honoring the power of the client, honoring their knowingness, their own wisdom. So I think this is great.
Yeah, but and in the case, when you take that power for you, facilitator, you take out the power of the client. So when I take my power out, the client can take it.
Yeah. So you don't take the credit, you don't take the responsibility, and you don't take the wisdom, and you leave it all with them where it belongs, and then they can make the change. Maybe if they take take the responsibility, but it's ultimately their path and their life.
And also I used to say another thing, that the real life is outside, is not inside. It's not when we do a constellations. When we do a constellation, it's marvelous. We like very much. It's sometimes it's emotional and it's great. But the point is not there. What happens outside? That's the real world. And if you don't empower the client so he can do something outside, he will become perhaps dependent on us. And so he wants to come next week to have the same feelings, but to do nothing. So that is a big responsibility.
I think that is a big thing that the entire systemic community should be reminded of a lot. And I really appreciate you coming on here with us and sharing that. And we're going to share this interview with everyone, and we invite everyone to come this weekend because it's going to be very, very valuable and enriching. And so for a few of the topics that we're going to be covering,
I would say that everybody can come, that I will be quite provocative. And
I am saying
perhaps, that and perhaps saying things that some at the beginning people can think like, oh, what's that? And I like that.
Yes, I like to have I think something that would serve the community would be taking more responsibility and realizing, I think there is a big misconception that the real world is inside the room during the constellation, and the fake world is outside. And I think that this piece right there, that sentence right there would make a huge difference for the systemic community. I think it's a crucial sentence that, a constellation is a simulation, and that the real world is out there, and everything that we want to create is out there. And so I think it's a huge thing that we need to really get. And some of the topics that we have listed on the flyer here is that we're going to be looking at how to approach the client, and whether you're a facilitator or not, this is going to be very valuable. What kind of attitude do you come with, where you can honor other people's destinies and facilitate a process for other people, whether you run an organization or whether you run a family or whatever it is? How do you come into contact with this, with the client, and whether your client is your son or your husband or your daughter or your mother? Obviously, looking at your mother as your client is a difficult, very, very slippery slope. So I'm not recommending that. But how do you approach in terms of entering their world, and really what kind of temperament and attitude do you bring, Cecilio? And then what do you pay attention to when you encounter?
Yeah, the question that you told, I don't want to enter in their world. If I enter in their world, perhaps I can crazy, because I cannot understand the world of other people. So the big point is that we have to understand that we are completely different. So each one of us came from a lot of systems, and each one of us has a different kind of glasses. So I see the world through these glasses. You see through your glasses. So what happens is that there is no reality in this world. Nothing is real. The only thing is real is what we see. And the point is that all human beings think that we see the same thing as the others. So now in this interview, and we are here live in Facebook, what people are seeing, we don't know, we don't imagine. What is important for each one of us, we don't know. So that is the big thing about our attitude, is that we have to understand that I don't understand the other, but I can help the other in order to help a process, in order he can help himself. We are not helping anybody. Only each one of us can help us. But sometimes if we have a professional that show us some things or help some ways, give us a different view, I can change my attitude and do different things. So, and the question is that we think that we understand the other, and it's the example I like to give is, for instance, between men and women. It's not possible to understand a woman for us. And for the woman, it's not possible to understand us. So how can we live together? So with this difference is not to understand each other, but in a way accept each other, how it is, and how can we together build a common way, a common path. And if we see that, and this is more clear in these cases, because there are a lot of jokes about men and women, but it's not men and women. There is no other man that's equal to me. If we see each other too, we are completely different. Your history is completely different than mine. So you see the world through your experience in this world, and also in your past experiences and the systemic that is going there. So we don't know what is the real thing. But what happens in constellation that I think it's really interesting is that sometimes we think that we change the reality. No. What we think is how we see the reality. So that's the beauty of the constellations, because we can change the perception of the client for something that happened. That's why we sometimes look to the past, but we don't change the past. We just change, or the client change, the perception of the past, and with that, he can change something. And that is real interesting. So when we understand that, we begin to respect our clients. And when we respect our client, the work is easy to do.
Great. I really appreciate that. And I want to do a follow-up question. It's actually a question from Facebook. It's actually from people who are watching now live, which is great. Welcome, everybody. The question is, how would you empower and guide and encourage the client to take actions when they go home? To take the action when they go home, and how do you see that, and how do you do that if you do that?
I try not to do it, because in a way, it looks like I know what the client has to do. So I try not to do. Perhaps I can give some clues for doing something for being more empowered. But what I do is mainly during the constellation and during the interview. So in a way that when the client, for instance, asks me, what do you think? My favorite answer is that I don't know. And when the client, in a way, and it's always like that, the client wants that we take responsibility, I say, no. I will not do anything for you. If you want to do it. That's why normally in constellations, I try not to move any representative. The movements of the representatives are done through the client. And that I can show during this weekend. That's the way I think it's more empowered. If not, if I'm changing the system of the client, so it's easy in a way to balance the system, but it does not strengthen the client, because it was not the client that did it. So even if you know some rules about constellations, and you think that the client should do this and this, but we don't know if the client is able to do it, or if the client is able to do it today. Perhaps in 3 months, yes. So perhaps the client today has to do a small step, not the big step that perhaps we are looking, or that we think we see.
Great, I really appreciate that. And here's what I'm hearing, Cecilio, that the reality is that we don't know. And if the reality is that we don't know, we need to be really comfortable with not knowing. Mm-hmm. And then we can do better work. So if we're in contact with not knowing and not facing the reality that we really don't know, then we can do better work.
Of course, and it's not so heavy for us. If I put the responsibility on myself to solve the problem of the client, I will feel very heavy. And I cannot solve the problem I will never do it. Even I cannot solve the problems of my kids, of my family. And that's the point. If we can have that philosophy of being in constellations, it will be more light for us to do the work, and more effective for the client, I think so.
Absolutely. Cecilio, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate it. People, I want to welcome you and invite you with us this weekend. You can see the information on the flyer. We're going to share the information as well. There's one more question in Facebook, and this is a more specific kind of question, and it's about, would you have a moment and first of all, do you facilitate blind constellations in any kind of way? And yes. Would you show us how do you see that this weekend about blind facilitation, blind representatives, and any of those things? That's a question in Facebook.
Yeah, I do blind constellations, but more and more I don't like to do it, and mainly because I work with organizations. Mm. And so if not, it looks a little too magic. It depends. If I work for several times in that organization, I can do that, or even a small bit of that. So for me, it's better that everybody knows what's going on. And in a way, sometimes that is a little afraid of the facilitators. If I do it blind, I'll do it better. And that was my feeling. Even when I was in a company, I used to say that it was better to take representatives from outside, not from the company, because in the company they know everything, and they could, in a way, change something. Now, more and more, I do constellations in the company with people of the company, because now I don't have a afraid. And for one thing that is really important, I don't know what the client sees, but I know that the client only gets what is important for him. So if a representative says a lot of things, even in a logical way, or and that are their own, if what the representative says doesn't resonate with the client doesn't hear. Because the client hears a bit of information of this representative, that, and do a fusion of them. So if some sentence can hear from some of them and they not resonate with him, it doesn't happen. So I work with a lot of companies with their people there, and it's amazing.
Great. So it sounds like you are saying that there is a little bit of a sort of a self-protection mechanism within the client that is hearing exactly what it is that they need and want, and they're kind of blocking out the rest.
No, I don't think it's self-protection, because he doesn't need. The question is that you, on your daily life, you only hear what resonates with you. That's automatic. I don't think it's a blockage. It's some noise that comes here and you let it go. So it's not blocking a process of blocking this information yes and this information no. No, it's just noise.
It's
For something now I'm hearing a little noise on the computer, but it's not important for me. So
yes,
it gets, we are having this conversation. This is the so.
Gets lost in the noise.
Yeah, I think so.
Great.
But of course, that everything that I say, it's my beliefs. I cannot prove, but other theories cannot prove also. So we have to go where we think we are more comfortable.
Great, and we allow everyone to test the ideas we're sharing here and to take them in their life and experiment with them, and so that they can find their own conclusions, because we already said that we don't know, Cecilio. So if we don't know, so that's really important. And one more question from Facebook. Are you going to be talking about organizations and your work in organizations, or is it going to be a general conversation or more focused on the organizational work this weekend?
My expertise is organizational constellations. So I'm going to talk about organizations, but applying the method on organizations. I'm not going to teach what is an organization.
Right.
I'm going in a way to see how can we apply this tool in organization. And I hope that we have a lot of questions and doubts that will enrich all this sharing.
Great. I'm very much looking forward to it. It's going to be very rich, and we always have a global audience, and I know you like to work in a global stage, and you are all over the world in so many different countries. So this is a perfect platform for this kind of event. Thank you so much, Cecilio, for sharing your wisdom with us. And we're very much looking forward to this weekend. We're going to put the flyer into this post. We're going to share this this interview all over the world and with all the groups, and hope we get a large turnout. We already have a large number of people that are joining us, so it's going to be exciting. And thank you so much, Cecilio, for making yourself available today and this weekend. We're very much looking forward to it.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and we'll see us on the weekend to have fun. That's the best thing that we can do with this method.
Yes, Cecilio. Thank you so much, and we will see you this weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.